Woohoo! Okay, you ready? Ready for this one? Teaching by principles. Okay, so kind of like delivering the class, we're now looking at just reinforcing the ideas behind teaching, how to teach by principles. So, first of all, cognitive principles. Okay, cognitive, so from the brain. Okay, learning should be automated or without thought. So, learning languages should be effortless without friction. Okay, so if you think like a child does not go, what? Why do we use the past simple like the past, present perfect, perfect? No, they don't do it. They just listen and they absorb and they repeat, and they do so much that they end up using the verb, the ed regular for most words. Trying to think of an example right now, but they'll say something like I do it, rather than I did it. They've heard the ed so often that they'll start to kind of create their own rules. So they're just automating it. They're basically doing it without thought, right? I mean, again, kids are not there studying grammar. They're not trying to put an explanation to every single point. They're just letting it flow. So this is the thing. Don't worry about small language issues. Focus on fluidity, and the practice makes perfect. So, sometimes you get those students who well, I really need to know, why is it like this? But teacher, you're not helping. I need to know, why is it like this? And they're going red in the face, and they're about to like explode or implode just because they don't understand the tiniest, most minute language point that basically isn't going to help them at all in communicating. So it's avoiding just, you can say to that student, I have done in the past, look, it's not really important, to be honest. Don't worry about it. You're getting yourself worked up, you're getting stressed about it. That's not going to help your learning. So forget about it. Just move on. And this doesn't it's not easy to do this. It does take practice. It takes time for language to become automated, but certainly they can't be dwelling on a very small little point which has very little significance to overall learning, overall communication. So yeah, learning should be automated or without thought. Okay. Next, learning must be meaningful. So we talked about this lots before. Meaningful learning will lead to better long-term retention. So that's a pretty damn good reason to teach meaningful classes. It's because you're better remembering them. Confucius, no? He said, I'll forget everything I'm told. I can sort of remember everything, I read, but I understand by doing. So when you're doing something, like a task, it's more relevant, it's more meaningful. So yeah, better long-term retention. That's really what we're aiming for. People to actually, from the information, you forget information, you forget facts, but you don't forget understanding. You don't forget real knowledge. So that's what we're aiming at here: meaningful learning. Okay. Otherwise, it's boring, and teachers and students will tell you that. Why are we studying physics? What was it like at traditional schools? This propaganda machine from the government that says you must learn this and you must learn that, but they don't really tell you why, and you're forced to do things that you don't really enjoy. You're not good at maths, and you're ridiculed for not being as smart as others. But ultimately, it's because that learning wasn't meaningful. So learning should always have a goal and appeal to learners' interests. Okay, so that's the same thing, isn't it? It's saying, well, we need to have an objective. Okay, we need to know where we're going. Okay, we need to know why are we doing this, and we need to do it so that it relates to our learners. That we're not going to teach boys about makeup. Okay, I mean, unless this is a makeup school, but we're going to choose the information. We're not going to teach about Barbie dolls to a bunch of boys. They're going to be much more interested in football. It's obvious. So avoid that random learning language as well. So just here's something we can learn today, and then here's something else that we can learn today. Always try and relate it to learners' lives and create some meaning behind the work, using authentic texts and that kind of thing. So yeah, pretty obvious that one. Learning needs to be meaningful. Reward. Okay, we act based on the anticipation of reward, tangible or intangible, short or long term. So, we we get a little dopamine hit when we get a message, on WhatsApp. We get a little reward of, chemical reward in our brain whenever we do something that we enjoy, that we like doing. And so we're motivated by our needs and our desires, and that is really powerful. Which we'll look a little bit later, because it comes in under intrinsic motivation. But the reward of self-fulfillment is enough to drive anyone forward. So you need to also encourage and praise your learners, okay? Giving them a good thumbs up, a wink, a smile, a hey, well done, awesome. That's going to encourage them and give them a kind of a short-term reward. The same thing, you can get them to do that to each other. So you encourage this community of giving and taking rewards and praising each other, and that's very nice, collaborative kind of world we want to live in. And also remind them of the long-term rewards of learning English. What is this actually going to do for your life? This is going to open many doors of opportunities. If you can speak to more people, you can tap into more people's resources and work with more people and travel to more countries where they speak the same language, and generally that's going to help you understand other cultures as well, and texts, lots of texts and research, mostly in English, so in order to find new information, new techniques, and get ahead of others, English is a great tool for getting there. So students need reminders. Put a little poster up in your wall, or in your classroom of what are the benefits of learning English, and just have that. Again, motivation doesn't always stick around, so it needs to be constant. And that is what leads on to intrinsic motivation. We've talked about it before. But the most powerful motivation comes from within ourselves, from our needs, wants, and desires, because it's a self-rewarding process. So isn't that fantastic? Like, if we're doing things that we want and what we need or what we desire, we're rewarded with that. So, that's what they say. We're teaching such good fun because you're helping other people and you enjoy doing it, and you get to choose how you want to do it. And I'm making these videos and these courses because I enjoy doing that, because I want to help out and I want to help as many people. And I know that the internet is a way of doing that. It's about reaching as many people as possible. And that is where my passion comes from. It's where, because I'm fulfilling my own needs and my own wants and my own desires. So it's self-rewarding. It keeps you really well motivated. And essentially, like I'm just telling you now, is you as the teacher need to set the example. If you come into class and you're like, oh God, I hate my life, like as if this was a 9 to 5, and you're working, a lot of people obviously suffer. They're suffering because they haven't reached that self-realization yet, and they've probably continued through the school system, and they've been brainwashed into going, okay, well, first I did primary school, then I did secondary, then I went to university, and I've got this job, and I'm going to do that until I'm 65, and then finally I'll retire, and then I can do what I want. And it's like, no, you've been brainwashed. Basically, you can do what you want right now. You just have to trigger that. You have to find that passion. You have to find what are your needs, what are your wants, and what are your desires. Most teachers don't want to travel. They want to live a different life. They're frustrated with what's going on in their own country, politically, economically, the weather. So what do? They move somewhere else. And you want to help people, you want to serve people, you want to be happy. Well, then teach other people, because they need you. If you've got knowledge to share, then you can help other people. That's part of how history has happened. The people who've walked before us. That ancient knowledge, of yoga and spirituality and reincarnation and the oneness of the universe. That's all been passed down through thousands of years of knowledge, and not even been written down. It's been taught through the knowledge from teacher to student, and the student becomes a teacher. So if there's someone in front of you, they say the teacher appears when the student needs it. That's it. This is your opportunity to help the world. And even if it's somewhat limiting to teach English, for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Some people do it for a lot longer, like myself, make a career out of it. you can still take these transferable skills. You can still take these coaching skills that you've learned, these mentoring skills, and apply it to different fields where perhaps you're more passionate. So yeah, set the example. Bring the energy into your classroom. Yeah. What I like to do is I stand up. I like to stand up because it gives me more energy, and I want to share that energy and that passion with the students. I mean, they want to come into my classroom and they want to be leaving with more energy than they had, even though they were sat down and they were not, they were sat down. They weren't physically moving a lot, but they're inspired. They're now better educated. They're better prepared to survive in this world that we live in. So intrinsic motivation, yeah, figure out their, they need to figure out their own needs, wants, and desires in order to create this self-fulfilling, self-rewarding process of motivation. Strategic investment. So real important is that your students must realize it's their responsibility and duty to learn. It can't all be you as the teacher, that you can only guide them, you can only take them to a certain point, a certain stage. I mean, I like to see this as being like tour guides, basically. The tour guide helps, takes you on a course, goes from site A to B to site C and whatever, and gives you information in between that, and makes it interactive, engaging, and has a little quiz at the end, or presents a prize if anyone can remember any of the information, things like that. Yeah, but ultimately the walker, the person, has to walk. They have to use their own 2 feet. So the guide is not literally carrying them; they're just helping. So as English teachers, we're also guides. We're guides, but we must realize that it's ultimately their own strategic investment that counts. So I like to say to them, it's not about what you're doing today. Are you investing today into this? It's think about the minute that you have, this 60 seconds right now. What can you do with 60 seconds? You can learn one new word. You can commit to learning one in 1 minute. It's 60 seconds. I bet you could do 5 words if you wanted to. So greater accountability and consideration for learner roles, right? It's up to the learner as well to play their part in the learning process. Okay, just as well as being a teacher, you learn from your students. It's not a one-way street. It's both ways. I've learned so much from my students, over the years. It's given me loads of value. So they're important. They're knowing their own roles is just as important. And I do encourage them, saying, like, what are you doing? Are you doing the homework? Are you maybe they're not doing so well. They're failing. Well, then I assist them. Well, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing your homework? Are you participating in every class? Are you coming to every class? How's your home life? Like, are you looking after your home first? I mean, how's your health? Are you eating properly? Are you sleeping properly? There's all these factors. You can't change the world unless you've got yourself in order first. So the same goes for students. I mean, the best schools in the world teach that. They teach accountability, because what happens? What can you do in this life, in this world today, that you couldn't do 20 years ago? You can go online and you can learn on your own. I mean, I've done a lot of that myself, even for this course, or I've built my own websites, or lots of skills, photography. How have I learned those things? I've gone out and bought books. I've gone out and done the reading. I've done the research, and that can be done at home. You don't have to be in a classroom to do that. When it comes to the classroom, that's when you want to be collaborating, going, okay, this is some photos. What do you think of these photos that I've taken? Not like, okay, how do I turn on the camera? That I can figure that out at home. What I can't figure out is the opinions and the perspectives of other people. So working together in that sense, like, that's why the classroom should be about that. It should be about the practical stage, the doing, rather than just the theory, because the theory these days, they can do it at home. So you need to bring that awareness to the students to say, hey, you can do this at home, okay? This is going to help you, because then we can come and practice it in class, and do the speaking and the discussion and the participation, and so much more that we can do. If you only go and do a bit of homework, do some work at home, and that's the same thing for. I give a little tip to my students, my Spanish learners. I'm based here in Peru, so they struggle with grammar sometimes, and I say to them, and I did too. I had the same thing at university, and I studied French at university, and then obviously I studied Spanish, and it was only until I actually became an English teacher when I delved into English grammar. And I started going, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand the English grammar like a bit better. Right? Oh, okay, yeah, I see. And then I started thinking, hold on a second, why didn't I know this when I was doing French? I remember struggling with French grammar and going, I don't understand what any of this means. If only at that time, and nobody in my course, my University of Manchester, a great university, but can you imagine, nobody told me this. Nobody ever said to me, do you know English grammar? Do you know your own language's grammar? Because inevitably, learners are going to be comparing. They're going to use, if they're adult learners, they're going to be going through their first language and translating. But they nobody ever told me, well, do you know English grammar? It's like that expression, like, how can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? So how can you understand another language's grammar if you don't understand your own grammar and how the structure of your own language works? So that's what I told them. I said, go home, study a little bit of like Spanish grammar, and then you'll realize how similar they are, how similar both languages work, and it's not actually that different. But yeah, they struggle because they don't really understand it in their own language. So that's a little tip that I tell them. So yeah, just think to yourself, right? How am I attending to this as a teacher? Am I encouraging them to be accountable? Am I encouraging them to have autonomy in their learning? Am I encouraging them to? Am I giving them extra readings, extra opportunities to learn more about it? As the role of a teacher, and am I bringing awareness of the learner's role? That they can't just come in and sit next to you and somehow magically the information will just onomatopoeia like through you into them. Onomatopoeia, no, osmosis. Sorry, osmosis. Like a potato, cooking a potato. It's not going to happen. They need to do the work themselves. So bring that awareness to them. Okay, affective principles. So these are now, rather than cognitive, like thinking, it's more like emotional. Affective, a cool word. So ego, language, ego. Different language, different person. Okay, have you ever like learned French and you're like, oh my god, I'm so romantic right now. I'm suddenly like I can cook and I can write poetry and that is my terrible French accent. But this is the point. When you start speaking another language, you essentially adopt a new ego. It's like, oh my god, like I'm suddenly a new person. With Spanish, it's like, oh, I can now dance I can dance salsa, and I can do lots of cool things that I could never do before because I'm now speaking Spanish. So this is proven that people adopt a different ego. One of the key things is that they say you really have learned a language when you start dreaming in another language on the one that you're learning. But try and think about any times that you've started speaking another language and that you've just had this kind of shift in consciousness and felt something different about yourself. It happens. So that can be great. It can be positive, but it can also be negative, right? So you need to be nice to the fragility and defensiveness of your students, yeah? So they are like, oh my god, like I'm so confident, I'm so outgoing in my language, and now I'm speaking English and I'm like shy, I'm timid, I don't know what to say, okay? And now the teacher's calling on me to say something, and I'm like, there are people around me who are maybe a bit younger than me, and I feel pretty bad. I feel like this is not normally me. I'm normally in control of the situation. But right now, I feel weak, I feel afraid, I feel, intimidated, and that's because I'm not sure about how to respond in this new language. So you've got to be careful of the egos that are in play in the classroom. You'll definitely find that there are those egos in the classroom which are very happy to respond, make mistakes, no problem. Even if it doesn't matter, they'll shout out whatever they think, good for them. But you'll get the other ones who are suddenly feeling a lot more fragile, and you need to be very encouraging, especially at those lower levels. Make sure they don't give up. I feel so bad about the whole thing. They just think, you know what? I've met people like that. They said, I just gave up in English because my teacher was bad. I didn't have a good teacher, and that just demotivated me. I didn't think I was capable of doing it. You have to remind the students that They are all capable of learning the language. Everyone is able to learn a language. Absolutely. There's no question about it. Everyone can do it. It's obvious. So many people already do it. Anyone can do it. Everyone has the capacity to do it. It's just about the investment that we talked about earlier. So same thing for ageism, right? It's a myth, really. It's a myth that people who are like 60, 70, 80 can't learn a new language. It's a complete myth. The only difference is that they're not likely to be able to sound like a native. It's only pre-puberty where people learning at those years are able to fully adopt the pronunciation of the like a native speaker. But from that point on, it's a complete myth that the younger you are, the better you are. You can learn it at any age. It just depends on your own attitude and your own wants and your own all these principles that we're talking about. So in the classroom, just be careful to consider these egos while teaching. Okay, lots of praise again, not too much punishment or anything like that. Don't laugh at people. Call out the people who have got like a stronger ego or more confident. Be wary of those who are more sensitive. Confidence. Okay, so this is basically what I just said in the last slide, that the learner's belief that they are capable of achieving is at least a partial factor in their eventual success. So you need to say to them this point that they can do it. They're perfectly capable of doing it. It's not like it's impossible. Humans have a great capacity for language. We're unique in that we can share experiences with each other and get creative. We're unique in the fact that we can speak any language. So it's just about making them realize that they are absolutely capable of doing it. It's just about it's a process. It's just the work required. Risk taking. So getting past uncertainty and take risk. Praise the language gamblers. Create a safe setting for learners. Just sorry for the missed R. Yeah. So like okay. Yeah, risk taking, like you need to risk it. You have to make mistakes basically. Think gamblers, yeah. You need to put your money where your mouth is, and try new things and have a go, especially in the classroom setting where it is that safe environment. And that's why Maslow's hierarchy of needs is important, making sure that everyone is safe and secure, and that obviously that they can't be coming to work as well or coming to class hungry or tired. It's not going to help their learnings. But you can create a safe setting for learners and allow them to make and take risks as much as possible, to take guesses. It's a guessing game, English, or learning any language, and there's benefits to that. It's like one, you're trying, so if you make a mistake, then you can learn from it, and if you don't make a mistake, then you're all good. So it's not exactly a lose-lose situation. It's a win-win situation. The other thing is that when you do go abroad or you're speaking to people and you're trying, you automatically gain massive respect, massive rapport from the person you're speaking to. Mandela said, speak to a man in your language and you speak to his mind, speak to him in his language and you speak to his heart. So there's this there's the emotion of trying, and usually what happens is you try and you make a mistake and everyone around you laughs and they go, ha ha ha, what, this is hilarious, this guy, I love him, he's trying, he's failing miserably, but it is hilarious what he's saying. And is there no better thing to make people laugh, as long as that doesn't hit your ego? Is that not a good thing to make other people laugh around you? That's like making friends. It's like being a comedian without even trying. So when you make people laugh, they tend to accept you for who you are better. They trust you more, and you're on your way. And they may not correct you. They might correct you, but you haven't really got too much to lose. So risk take the risk and encourage your students to do the same. Okay, linguistic principles. So language, cultural connection. Okay, so a language is not just words and sounds, but a complex system of cultural customs, values, and ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. Language is the tool used to better understand culture. Okay, so that's it. That's really it, isn't it? It's to make students aware that it's not just a language. Okay, it's much more than that. It's to be British, Americans, same language more or less, but quite different values. It's not exactly the same. Okay, for good or for worse, who knows? But I'm British, so I'll say probably for worse. But let's not that's just a joke. I'm just kidding. Language cultural connection. Yeah, we've got this sense of humor. What's acceptable? What you can say in settings, what you can't say in settings. Got one of these kids here in Peru. He said to me pendejos. Oh, he said huevon, which, sorry if you're Spanish, and this is like saying big egg. But I said to him that's not cool. You can't you can't say that in a school. And he said no, in Peru it's fine. In Peru it's like it's normal or something. I'm like, I don't really believe that, and that's quite a typical thing for Peruvians to say, is they'll try and kind of wing things, like say, oh, it's fine here, that's how everyone does it. And it's like, no, it's not everyone does it like that. Don't be, you be a little bit more considerate. So yeah, like swear words. Like, when are you going to use swear words? When's an appropriate time to swear? When is it not appropriate? When have you got formalities? When have you got misformalities? When are you going to say things like, I'm losing my mind? No, like, what does that actually mean for people from our culture? That means you're going insane. But for them, it might just mean like, oh, I'm forgetting something. So subtleties of languages. It's not just the language. It is a culture behind it that affects thinking, feeling, and acting. So better to make them aware of that. The native language effect. So this one's really interesting. That students' errors are windows into internalized systems. So get students to internalize their English as well. So yeah, most of the issues that people will face when they're trying to learn English will stem from their mother language, their mother tongue, their first language that they've learned. So when you see these errors, it's like looking into a magnifying scope and seeing those internalized systems going into play. So very typical Spanish mistake would be to say, the car red. Okay, well, why is that happening? That's obviously because they've got the internalized carro rojo, no? And you're like, okay, so they're obviously doing the same like they would do in Spanish, and that reflects the mistake they're being made here. So you can address that. You can say, okay, this is quite typical of these speakers, and here's how to fix it. Okay. Same thing about this idea of internalizing their English. So thinking in English, dreaming in English, to go into their bedroom at home and start going, what does that mean in English? What does that mean in English? What's the word for this thing? And really starting to play on the internalization of the language can have a positive effect. I mean, I remember doing the same thing when I was learning Spanish, and it's easier if you're already in the country. I was in Argentina, and you just see signs and you go, what does that mean? And then you see like shop window, name of a window of a shop, and you go, what does that mean? Or you're just walking with a friend and you go, how did you say that? So you're constantly trying to better yourself by internalizing everything. Interlanguage. Give positive, effective feedback to your students. Okay, so yeah, I mean they've got a lot to learn from you helping them out. Basically, if you give them the feedback, you're the consultant, you're helping them out. They probably don't get a lot of opportunities for that to happen outside of the classroom. So this is the point here, that you need to give feedback to your students, those internalized errors, those systems, the tools they need to progress. Feedback's incredibly important to let them know where they're going right or wrong, and that's what they're coming to class for, to get your feedback, to get your insights. So definitely do that. 12, communicative competence. Yeah, so focus on all aspects of communication. Yeah, so everything from pronunciation to the grammar to the reading to listening to theatre to acting to playing. Everything is important. So it's not just isolated pieces of language that you're learning. You're really learning. It's a bit like the 4 C's essentially, isn't it? It's communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. So putting that as a whole, and it's not just I can speak English. It's like, no, you're adding the intonation to that. You don't want to sound like a robot. You need help with listening. And there are many, 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 many more factors about it all really happening. The cultural systems behind it as well, the nuances, lots of parts of communication and the point is to focus on all of them and not just isolate one or the other. Okay, level up, level up. What do you think are the top three most important principles? Be great if you can leave your comments below.